Baroness Bennett of Manor Castle.
My Lords, I declare my position as a Vice President of the Local Government Association. Now, this debate is covering a particular set of rules in Birmingham, Sandwell and Solihull, and what I'm about to say is guided by what Green Party councillors in the area have shared with me about what their constituents have told them and the problems that have been raised with those councillors. A big difficulty, perhaps the biggest difficulty, is communication. Many people, for entirely comprehensible reasons, don't understand the reasons for the restrictions being as they are, or why it's okay for people to go into another household to work, but not for social reasons. And this lack of understanding often leads to a lack of compliance, either intentionally or unintentionally. I understand that there is evidence that there's a real risk of and greater transmission within households, greater than in public venues where people tend to be more careful and businesses have an interest in providing an environment that is COVID secure. But that is not being carefully, soberly explained. Understandably, if people feel that something is senseless, they either give up or descend into confusion, trying to do the right thing, but without understanding what that is and why. The gaping chasm of government communications failure is being filled by often dangerous misinformation. What is lacking is calm, realistic, sensible evidence communication through national channels. Not boosterism, but balance. There's also clear and obvious inequality issues that the government need to acknowledge and seek to mitigate. People who can afford to go into a restaurant or cafe will be able to continue to meet family and friends, whereas those on lower incomes may be unable to do so. There's some hope that libraries may be a resource for this purpose, but that obviously potentially clashes with other uses requiring quiet and is a very limited resource. A question for the Noble Lady, the Minister: what consideration has the government given to providing resources to councils, given the already extreme pressures on councils from so many different directions? They'll need it to provide extra resources, to provide free managed spaces for groups of people to meet. Does the government still have a loneliness SAR? Have they been consulted and involved? Now, there have also been significant difficulties with informal childcare arrangements. In the initial guidance, it wasn't allowed for friends and family to look after children. Only registered childminders were still allowed, and that caused a great deal of stress and worry to working parents. I asked the Noble Lord Bethel about this at the time, and I thank him for writing to me later after the guidelines have been changed to allow this. But this is the sort of thing that should and could be sorted out from the start, before anything is announced or done. Communication is not the only problem. Constant change in the rules and guidelines also clearly is. Many noble lords, many of us feel like we're becoming a recording, but if we had proper procedures for introducing rules and debating them, time to consider and examine them, we could set up a stable national framework, as my noble friend Baroness Jones of Molescombe said in an earlier debate today. Another concern from residents has been that for those at higher risk and previously shielding, their own garden provides a more easily controlled and potentially safer environment for them to meet family and friends compared to public spaces. It doesn't seem to make much sense, the rules on gardens, although of course many also don't have that option. Informal communication from police officers also indicate that these rules are almost impossible to enforce in any meaningful way. The problem we keep coming back to is that laws, guidance and suggestions from the government, sometimes seemingly thrown out at random, have all been mixed up. And I think we can identify the area of informing on the neighbours being a particular problem. New Zealand introduced a 4-level alert system on March 21. March 21, my lords. And obviously I'm looking from a great distance, and there have been mistakes in that nation's management of COVID-19, which were quickly acknowledged and fixed. But there's also been clear public understanding of the arrangements, the reasons for them, and a very high level of compliance. As the Noble Lady Baroness Barker said, the government has to get on the front foot against the virus. And at the heart of that has to be a clear framework. Laws that apply chiefly to businesses and institutions, well-evidenced and explained guidance for individual and group behaviour, a systematic approach and framework that is then flexibly exercised according to local circumstances. And that local decision making has to be key, but we need sensible guidance from the centre. Thank you, my lords.
I now call